Welcome to Locked On NBA Game Night for Monday, October 28th. I'm Wes Goldberg here with Swipa. Coming up, Steph Curry leaves the Warriors game early. Trouble might be brewing with the Bucks, and the 76ers get their first win of the season in thrilling fashion.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NBA Game Night. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Wes Goldberg here with Swipa. However, you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. A fun Sunday of hoops, so we're going to get to all the games here, but let's start in Golden State where the Warriors lost to the Clippers. But the headline coming out of this one is Steph Curry, who left the game and did not return after turning his ankle in the third quarter. He turned it for the first time at the end of the third quarter, started stretching it out on the bench a little bit, came back briefly in the fourth quarter before turning it again, basically right away. This time did not go to the bench. Instead, he walks right to the locker room, visibly frustrated, and then he was pretty quickly thereafter ruled out for the rest of the game. He will undergo an MRI, but at the time of us recording this, we don't know if he's going to have to miss more time. But it didn't look good, Swipa. Yeah. And if he does have to miss any kind of time, I mean, that could be killer in what's going to be a tough Western Conference.
Yeah, Steph is obviously always going to try to play through things, and it's a critical game, especially in the West. Wes, you might not be familiar with this, but 1 through 10 tend to fight for positioning in the playoffs. I know 1 through 8 kind of stops after that in the Eastern Conference, but right. I just think for the Warriors, man, they were just in a place where they're looking, especially for the Clippers team, that's going to be kind of in the same region, I think, as them. How do we get some of these tiebreakers? And they wanted to see if they can get one of the early season victories at home. Because the Warriors have looked good. Obviously they did not play versus this defensive competition in the first 2 games, but they still look like a very solid unit. And Steph wanted to go out and get another victory, but then he just ended up turning it way worse. And it not only did it not look good, but it looked like this could be something that he might have to deal with for at least a couple of weeks. It's just really unfortunate to see Steph, when he's been healthy, West, for the last couple of years, he's put himself in first team All-NBA discussions, borderline MVP discussions. But when he gets that injury and it takes away from his game at all, it just affects him and it affects the team as a whole. And so they could have won tonight's game if they had him, but man, outside of that, the Clippers, they have just looked a lot better than I think a lot of people gave them initial credit for.
Yeah, last thing on Steph really quick. I mean, it goes without saying basically, but anytime you're dealing with his ankles, your antenna goes up, right? He still wears the ankle braces and all of that stuff. He was a +2 in this game that was tied for the team high. Everybody else was kind of negatives. Nobody else really had a really strong game outside of Andrew Wiggins going for a fourth quarter spurt basically as soon as Steph went out, but it wasn't enough because, like you said, this Clippers team without Kawhi Leonard, who is basically still out indefinitely, they're playing really hard. Ty Lue has coached them well. They're coming out with a lot of effort. Norm Powell has started the season on a tear, and James Harden is doing all the table setting that you expect from James Harden. Zubac had a really nice game tonight against Golden State's lack of size. He just seemed like bigger, badder, stronger than everybody else that Golden State had out there. And they've won back-to-back games against the Nuggets and the Warriors. It was a really good weekend for the Clippers, and what was their over-under on FanDuel? It was like 39.5 wins or something like that. And I was like, are we sure that we just want to write the Clippers off completely? And so far, I mean, it's only been 3 games, but they look pretty good.
Yeah, and just for context, Zubac is averaging 23, 14, and 4 to open the year up. I mean, that's a very good start for him. Again, not sustainable. That's just not the way the NBA works. You're going to start off really well, or some people are starting off in slumps. But as the season goes on, those numbers were normalized. But Zoo has been a great defender on the interior this year. He's been a great scorer. The thing that makes that matchup work so well, and by the way, James Harden's averaging 25 and 12 on the year already. The thing that makes them work so well is that because Harden is such a good playmaker and short roll passer, if he has a big that's like a good vertical spacer and finisher, But then you add Zoo's ability to be a little bit of a short roll connector for the rest of the offense. And I'm talking really simple reads, not like making multiple decisions. But Zoo gets the ball in the short roll. If you collapse to overhelp, he's going to kick it to the corner of the wing. And then that where you get Derrick Jones Jr. or Chris Dunn or Norman Powell or another one of these guards, Terrence Mann, that can hit some of these open three-point opportunities. And that's kind of been their offenses. James Harden, get it set up, and then you're going to create for Norman Powell. You're going to create for Zoo. But I really think this is going to be the year, Wes, that a lot of people regain respect for James because people looked at James chasing money, chasing the bag. But James is one of the best guards in the league, and he's one of the best playmakers. So if he's able to stay healthy, I know he's 35, and that's going to be obviously the story for him this year. How much can he actually do? But if James is able to sustain kind of another 22-11 season like he did 2 years ago with the 76ers, I think this team could be better than people expect.
You know what's funny about this Clippers team is they lose Paul George in the offseason. They still haven't had Kawhi Leonard. Despite all of that, they have a really strong sense of identity, and I think even maybe stronger than when you're sort of dealing with, all right, Kawhi, is he in or out? Paul George, is he in or out? Like, the one thing you could say about James, you could say a lot of things about James Harden. One thing you have to say is the guy eats his innings, right? The guy plays the games. He is available, generally speaking, and when he's there, sort of head of the snake, setting the table for everybody else, the whole team offensively is built around him and that Zubac pick and roll like you're talking about. Zubac can make plays out of that short roll. He could also just do that one dribble, drop step right into the basket and dunk on somebody. And then you just surround those two guys, that two-man game, with guys like Derrick Jones Jr., Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, guys who are just going to make their shots.
Amir Coffey out of nowhere.
Amir Coffey, look at him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing stuff. I like when Zubac goes out of the game. They say, okay, we're going to play small. We got sort of Batum as our kind of fake center. This team just knows exactly what it is that they want to do, and who knows how many wins they're gonna get out of it. But I do think the strong sense of identity can just it helps teams, especially at this stage in the season. So can't write off the Clippers just yet. But let's go to Oklahoma City, where the Thunder beat the Hawks 128-104, 35-11-9 for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But the Hawks kept it close until the fourth quarter. But then Shai and Chet Holmgren took over. This is one of those games, Swiper, that just reminds you of how terrifying the Thunder can be. They went from down 1 at the start of the fourth quarter to up 10 in about 2 minutes. And I think the Thunder are going to lead the league in stops and scores. You know what I mean? Get a stop on one end, score on the other, because when they turn it on, they can defend anybody in the league. And then they just have so many different ways that they could score the basketball. They're 3-0, and I think very clearly the team to beat right now in the West.
Yeah, the thing is, they're not like, how do I say this? They're not like world beaters, like to where they look impossible to beat when you're playing them. The thing is, though, they're so monotonous in their process. Like, they're going to get to their shots. They're going to get to the mid-range. They're going to get stops on the other end. Chet is going to be a defensive terror. So basically, when you play them, you have to play them straight up even for over the course of a game, because if you let go of your rope, they will not, because they're going to have Alice Caruso, Cason Wallace coming off the bench, and they're going to give you real issues, real problems. And again, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not the most efficient, 11 of 24, but 10 of 11 from the free throw line, 9 assists for Shai. He's already starting off his MVP campaign strong. And then on top of that, Chet Holmgren. You know what's funny? You know, the other day I had to do a little sleeper pick for DPOY, and I said I think it might be Chet. I think Chet's the guy that people aren't talking about because Victor Wembanyama's taking the league by storm. You got Rudy Gobert. I think, again, as I've told you, I think Bam Adebayo is the best defender in the league, but he's not going to get the respect because the Heat have a sucky defense because they don't know, you know, there's all kind of stuff that's going on. But, like, the issue is Chet. Chet's going to be, like, the main big, the main defender on, like, a 60-win team. And he's going to be, like, well-known because he's going to have the stocks to back it up, too. So, I mean, they are just like a wave. After wave after wave.
Chet's already got the highlight against Nikola Jokic early in the season, and wave is such a great word to put it. And this is why I keep going back to the word terrifying with them. It's just because it's like you plug one hole and like another one just opens. It's like, all right, cool. We doubled Shai. We got the ball out of his hands. Oh my God, no! It's Jalen Williams now with the ball in his hands, and he's driving it on us, and he's going to kick out to Chet Holmgren, who could do all these different things. And then it's like, wow. Now they got Kason Wallace coming off the bench. You got Alex Caruso. It feels like they always have a way to beat you, and they just know how to do it. And so this team can just go 3, 4, 5 minutes without giving up a basket and just scoring in a multitude of ways. So clearly the team to beat, and they don't even have Isaiah Hartenstein back yet.
Yeah.
Things are not going so well for the Milwaukee Bucks right now. But what's the main reason for their 1-2 start, and can they fix it? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA Game Night every game, every night, your first listen of the day. Let's go to the Milwaukee Bucks, who have dropped 2 in a row after a surprising loss to the Brooklyn Nets, who are actively trying to lose games. So it doesn't seem like anybody accomplished what they wanted to accomplish on this Sunday game. But here's Locked On Bucks host Camille Davis, who says it's unacceptable what's going on in Milwaukee.
The Milwaukee Bucks dropped to 1-2 after losing 115-102 to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this loss would probably feel different if the Bucks didn't just have a disappointing loss to the Chicago Bulls at home for their home opener, but alas, it does. It follows a strong performance in Philly to open the season, where you saw improved ball movement offensively, you saw the Bucks getting into multiple actions, you saw effort defensively, especially at the point of attack against the Bulls. And then now tonight against the Nets, you didn't see that. You saw the ball sticking a lot more. You saw the defensive breakdowns over and over. Disappointing loss for a team that had quite a few disappointing losses to teams that they, quote unquote, should have beat last season. That was a point of emphasis for Doc Rivers this season, wanting the team to be dominant throughout the regular season. It's still early. Of course, there's going to be some growing pains learning a new defensive and offensive scheme, but the effort level from the Bucks the last 2 games, I should say, not acceptable.
So Swipa, Camille points to the effort level in Milwaukee. Is that what you think is going wrong?
Look, I got bad news for people in Milwaukee, and this has nothing to do with Giannis. This has everything to do with they have a terrible defensive team. I don't know how to say it. I don't want to make people feel away with that. But if you just look at 2023, the end of that year to now, they haven't been able to field a competent defense. They got blitzed by Miami in the first round, and ever since that point, they haven't guarded a parked car. They've been terrible defensively. Doc Rivers, he helped to kind of stabilize it a little bit when he got there, but they still couldn't get it. They were still mid. And right now, I'm asking you a question, Wes. Do the math. Damian Lillard, Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, and then you got DeLon Wright, who's a good defender, but again, he's like, he's coming off the bench. Like, he has to cover for these players. Dame and Gary Trent as your POA defenders, and then Taurean Prince, and then Brook Lopez, who's just not the same level defender he was 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. They don't have the personnel. Every time they're facing these guards that are fast. Oh, Kobe White, 35 points a few nights ago. And then on top of that, you get Zach LaVine going off. And then Dennis Schroeder. Like, everybody, they make fun of him because this, and that. He fumbled the bag and all that. He's a good player. Gave them buckets. Cam Thomas gave them buckets. Every time they face some guards that can get off, they will get off versus the Bucks because they don't have the foot speed. And the scheme is a drop scheme anyway, so they're going to be able to kill that. And then on top of that, they just look old. So they move slower than you anticipate they should be moving. And when you play fast teams that are athletic, that's going to be a real issue. So I think their defense is something that's here to stay. It might not be this bad every night, but you better believe it's going to be something they got to deal with throughout the entirety of the year.
So I wrote down the same thing. It's defense. And the whole problem here is defense. And you already mentioned the personnel, and you're exactly right. But you'd also think if you've got Giannis and Brook Lopez in your back line, you should still be better than what you're at now. The years of the Drew Holiday team, like all that stuff, being a number one defense, that's in the past. But you shouldn't be this bad. And they were never very good since making that Damian Lillard trade, even though Doc Rivers says that they were. But even after Doc Rivers got hired last year, they were still like 15th or 18th in the league in defensive rating post Doc Rivers being hired there. So this team never really got out of their own way. My problem with them defensively, beyond just the personnel, which is exactly right, is there's nobody even setting the tone for them defensively.
Yeah.
Like that was Drew Holiday's job. He was going to be going out there competing every single night, fighting over screens, being physical, setting the tone for them on that end. And it should be Giannis. It should be Giannis setting the tone defensively. It just doesn't. He doesn't. I haven't felt Giannis defensively in probably a couple of years now. And if he's not out there being a world beater defensively, like defensive player of the year capable defensive player, which is what this team just needs basically to tread water. If he's not setting that tone, then who's going to do it, right? It's not Brook Lopez's job at 36 years old. Chris Middleton on 2 glass ankles, like his days of being a good defender, that's gone, man. And you already hit it with Damian Lillard and Gary Trent. So, yeah, you know what? They're going to have to win on offense now. It's just the way that this team is built. But
which they can.
You got to get to a certain level defensively, and they're just clearly not even doing that. And I think it is partly effort. Like, nobody's out there making it a priority, right? I think everybody's sort of looking around waiting for somebody else to step up defensively, and that just ain't going to happen.
I think it's so funny, Wes, that, like, people are like, well, what about Giannis? I'm sorry. Giannis is going to average 35, 12, and 6 on, like, 62% from the field this year for this team. He's doing his jobs that he has to do. Somebody else can pick up that slack. That's supposed to be Brook. But at the end of the day, it's just the personnel. Like, it's not – Marshawn Beauchamp isn't getting time with them. Like, he's probably their best wing defender. Taurean Prince, you saw what he did last year with the Lakers. Like, he can be very inconsistent. I think he's a good on-ball defender at times, but off-ball, he doesn't bring a lot to the table. And, like, you just put all that together, and on top of that, if your center is slow and old, then, yeah, I can probably cook you. And so Giannis just doesn't have the ability consistently from game 1 to 82 to be, like, the best, a top 3 defender every single night and also be like Giannis on offense. That's just too much to ask.
Also doesn't help that they shot 30% from 3 against Brooklyn either. They're going to have to be better than that. Let's go over to the 76ers. They win an ugly game in overtime. Tyrese Maxey, 37 of his 45 points in the second half. He goes off, and the Sixers finally pick up their first win of the season. Obviously still no Joel Embiid or Paul George there for Philly. Meanwhile, the Pacers, they dropped to 1-2 in what has been a weird start to their season. Here's Locked On Pacers host Tony East with more about what's going on in Indiana.
That will not cut it for the Pacers, who fall in overtime to the 76ers at home. 118-114. They had too many chances to win, and none of them came through for the Pacers. They were up 5 with about 1 minute and 15 seconds to go. They were up many times in the final minute. They even hit a miracle 3 to tie the game and send it to overtime after blowing it, and still couldn't get it done. Tyrese Halliburton with 2 free throws and a chance to tie it late. Misses the first, misses the second on purpose. Just too much beating yourselves for the Pacers today, including on the glass. The 76ers, 20 offensive rebounds. The even turnover battle, 19 each. Ton of turnovers for the Pacers meant that the 76ers took 14 more shots from the field than the Pacers tonight. Lots of stuff that the Pacers could be better, but that is too much to overcome. Even though they shot it better and did better from the foul line, you cannot win a game with that possession battle. Their stars has to be better, and their urgency with their possessions has to be better. There's plenty more to come on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
Let's start there with the Pacers. Rick Carlisle in his post-game press conference was also pointing to turnovers and rebounds as the issue. What are you seeing from the Pacers?
Wes, I thought they had that game in the bag. I mean, once Hallie hit that shot, I'm talking about, like, I encourage y'all to go back and watch it if you didn't watch it. The dude, like, it was like a leaned over the man, like scooted over and just somehow got the ball up, and it swished. And I was like, how? And then Hallie had his first good game of the year. Shout out Tyrese Halliburton after putting up a 0 ball earlier this year. 22, 4-2. It's not great, but I think Hallie's going to be on the way. But Pascal Siakam plus 14 in this game. He was plus 14, was dominant today with 17, 5, and 6. His defense is going to be so important for them, I think, as the season goes on. You know what I noticed about this team right away? They have so many athletes. Like when Obi Toppin and Isaiah Jackson are coming off the bench, I'm just like, man, like they got leapers, they got Aaron Nesmith, they got Benny. They just got a lot of dudes that can get at it. And so honestly, like they got to a point in the fourth quarter, I'm like, all right, they're solidified. Like Miles Turner put the game away with these free throws. But then they just made mistakes, and then here you come. Tyrese Maxey. He's not shooting well so far this year, and I think he's like 14 to 32, 5 of 17 from three. It's just not the same, obviously, without Embiid. But when he gets in the fourth quarter, man, and like he gets one of these deep threes, and you give him any room at all, he's so dangerous getting that shot off, and he was able to connect on one of those today, and they just were able to just kind of pull it out over the top. And again, shout out Andre Drummond, man, like. Again, like I know rebounding sometimes for people gets overrated, but Andre Drummond finished so many baskets for them on the offensive end today, and he is such a terror on the defensive board that like he really like made some game-swinging rebounds down the stretch of this game and such as well. But I really like what the 76ers have in terms of their role players, like KJ Martin being on that roster, but I think they're going to struggle heavily, and they were lucky to get out of the game with the Pacers with the win today.
Yeah, this was a weirdly kind of a tough matchup for Indiana, despite all the injuries that Philadelphia is dealing with. Because look, I think the 76ers they're gonna lead the league in offensive rebounding. They might lead the league in rebounding overall because of what their personnel is. 5 offensive rebounds for Andre Drummond, 4 for Caleb Martin, 3 for Kelly Oubre. These guys just their crash rate is so high. They're always crashing the offensive boards, and that's part of what Nick Nurse wants them to do. Gershon Yabusele, 5 offensive boards for him, too. They get 20 offensive rebounds as a team. There's your game, right? And you mentioned Halliburton.
Wait, say that number again?
20 offensive rebounds. 20. And that wasn't even the most recorded by a team on Sunday. We're going to get to that in the next segment. But Halliburton finally wakes up, right? And like maybe quite literally wakes up because he was taking his pregame naps, what Steph Curry told him to do, and that made him drowsy. And maybe he didn't do it. I didn't hear if anybody asked him in the postgame for it, but he said he was going to stop doing it. And he scores 22 points. The bad part of Halliburton's stat line, though, is just 2 assists. And that is not how the Pacers are built. The Pacers are built for Halliburton. He has to score 20, but they're also going to need him to have 10, 11, 13 assists on any given night. And they just weren't getting enough of that. The turnovers really hurt them. Miles Turner had 6 in this game. It just felt like people were swatting the ball out of their hands all the time.
But Wes, the 76ers had 19 turnovers and 15 assists, and they won.
Yep.
I don't remember the last time I've seen that where a team has more turnovers than they have assists, and they still win the game. Negative playmaking game.
20 offensive rebounds. That's how that happens. If you just lose something that dramatically, but you're right, it's a great call. But yeah, this Pacers team, it's similar to what we were just talking about with Milwaukee, right? Like they're not going to be this amazing rebounding team. They're not going to. They are going to turn the ball over a fair amount just because of how fast they play. But it's mitigating those things and understanding, okay, there's a formula for us, and if one of these things is just too out of whack, it kind of blows the whole formula up for us. Speaking of offensive rebounds, is one of the biggest worries we have about the Pelicans roster playing out already. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Game Time. The basketball season is here, and Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many great ways to save money on tickets no matter when you buy. Game Time Picks shows you only the best value on tickets, and Game Time has last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. They have exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And they have zone deals where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big savings. And by toggling on the all-in pricing feature, you see the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA Game Night, every game, every night, your first listen of the day, the best way to support the show. Subscribe on YouTube, like the video on YouTube. Also, make sure you follow us and leave a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast app. Before we move on to our last game of the night, Swipa, one more thing on Philadelphia here. They can win without Joel Embiid and Paul George. And it feels like almost with Philadelphia, we've just kind of been putting them in a holding pattern until Embiid and Paul George come back, and they're going to be reevaluated now, like right around now, and could be back by the end of this week. But they're going to have to figure out how to win games when those guys aren't playing, or they're pretty much screwed, right? Like, and you mentioned Tyrese Maxey, who has not been shooting well to start this season, and a large part of that is because, well, defenses are just dialed in on him, and it's just so much harder for him to be efficient the way that he has. But
who's supposed to help him? Cody Martin or Caleb Martin?
Well, probably not Cody Martin, maybe Caleb Martin, but that's the thing, right? But they're gonna have to figure it out, and I don't really know how to do it other than maybe getting 20 offensive rebounds every night.
No, they're not going to be winning a lot of games. I would be shocked if they went 500 without Embiid and PG this year. Again, Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, Batum, Drummond, Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, KJ Martin with Embiid and PG. That sounds great. Without, that doesn't sound like much of anything. That's the Brooklyn Nets with a fully actualized Cam Thomas. That's what that would be. So no, they're not doing anything. Yeah. They have no shot because you're just not going to be able to rely on Tyrese Maxey here. Shoot the ball 30 times a game. You're literally, Wes. He is our only shot creator on the roster. That's it. So it all comes down to Tyrese Maxey, and then Drummond has to get 9 offensive rebounds in key game versus like the Celtics. No, they're cooked. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So they need their guys back.
17 3-point attempts for Maxey in this one, too. I mean, he is just putting them up. Kyle Lowry should be that other guy. They started him in this game because they felt like, okay, well, Maxey can't be doing it all on the ball. We got to get him off the ball, make things a little bit easier for him. And Lowry does help with that a little bit here and there, but he's clearly at a different stage of his career and can't be very consistent. Only played 17 minutes in this one, and that kind of feels like the max for him. But no, I mean, you get 14 points out of Kelly Oubre. You get 17 points out of Caleb Martin. All the names that you mentioned, all of these guys, so streaky, very streaky. But if you catch lightning in a bottle and you get 2 of these guys on a good night, plus Maxey on a good night, then okay, then maybe you can win something here. But yes, to the overall point, they cannot afford for Embiid and Paul George to miss all these games, especially not at the same time. Like, you got to have at least one of those guys out there. All right, let's move on to Portland, where the Trailblazers beat the Pelicans 125-103. Jeremy Grant had 28. Anthony Simons had 27 to lead the Blazers to their first win of the season. Meanwhile, the Pelicans dropped their first game of the season. Here's Jake Madison from Locked On Pelicans with more on the state of the Pelicans.
Here's 125-103. The first thing people are going to look at is the offense. Just 103 points for a team with Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum. But to me, the bigger issue is the defense, and this has been an issue for the first 3 games. They are struggling right now to contain dribble penetration, which is leading them to be in long defensive rotations. It's allowing opponents to score easily in the paint or on drive and kick threes. Think about that. A team with Zion Williamson is losing the points in the paint battle every single night. Look, offensively, this game wasn't great, and neither was the first half against the same Blazers on Friday. But don't forget, the Pels just lost their starting point guard in DeJounte Murray. This was someone who was going to fix a lot of the offensive issues, and suddenly he's not there. That's going to take a minute to work through. There's enough talent that this team will come around on the offensive side, but the defense, something they were good at the past 2 years, that needs to be fixed right now, and that's how they'll get back to winning games.
Portland bullied the Pelicans on the glass. A 51-39 rebounding advantage. And Swipa, here it is. They gave up 22 offensive rebounds in this one. Makes sense considering that they're starting Daniel Tice and playing a rookie Yves Missy at center right now. The size concern with the Pelicans was one that we kept going back to at the beginning of the year. Who's going to be playing center for them? How are they going to compete? And say what you want about Portland, but they got some big dudes at the very least. You got DeAndre Ayton, you got Jeremy Grant, you got some just Denny Avdia, you got some big bodies there. Yeah. They're not a good team by any stretch of the imagination, but they won the rebound battle and they won the game.
Well, if you just thought through your head without DeJounte, at their position, who's an above average rebounder at each of their positions relative to the rest of the league? Not
Nobody.
CJ, not Brandon. Zion is actually a bad defender, given where he should be or a bad rebounder. We're given where he should be as a rebounder. Yep. They just, their roster is obviously flawed. I think conceptually there are ways it can work. You know, Herb Jones is one of the most spectacular defenders in the league, and then you put that next to Trey Murphy, and then you put that next to DeJounte. Their model for me is similar to the 2021 Bulls or 21-22 Bulls when the Bulls had Lonzo, Caruso healthy. They were the number one defense in the league because they were just anchored their defense around their guards. And so I think similarly, that's how the Pelicans could be built as well with Murphy, with Herb Jones, and DeJounte. But the problem is like when you're missing one of those players or two of those players, you're like in a world of trouble. And they even Donovan Clingan off the bench had 9 rebounds. So they don't have any, like the starters can't rebound and then the bench can't rebound. But really to the other point, TJ McCollum's never been a good defender. That's just not what he is. B.I. is not even a good defender. He could be, but he just never grew into one at this point in his career. And Zion also is another dude that can just wax and wane on defense. So they're not rebounders. And then on top of that, you're not instinctual defenders. It's a recipe for losing if they're not locked in. I really love Willie Green. I think he's done a great job with this team, but they're definitely going to have to figure out life without DeJounte Murray. Because remember, they gave up Dyson Daniels in the deal.
Yep.
So they don't even have the backup guard coming into the game anymore.
No, they don't. And look, I thought Yves Messi has been good for where we thought he was going to be this raw center project guy, and he's given him 20 minutes a night, and I think he's been pretty decent there. Daniel Tice, you kind of know what you're getting from him, which is not a whole lot of rebounding, mostly just effort and diving on loose balls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A random stat that I'm just now seeing, Jordan Hawkins, the three-point shooting, small, skinny guy that they got, second on the team in rebounds. That's not ideal. Number 1 was Brandon Ingram. But it also doesn't help when you shoot less than 30% from three-point range, and that is going to be part of their formula. Zion crashing into the defense, getting that defense to crash in, rather, and then kicking out to open shooters, and then those open shooters making a bunch of shots. CJ McCollum has started off the season hot from three-point range. He went 3 for 10 tonight. Jordan Hawkins has been very good from as a shooter for them off the bench. He only takes 4 three-point attempts in this one, even though he made half of them. Brandon Ingram went 0 for 3. He's been awesome as a scorer to start off this season, especially now that he's kind of a featured player. No Trey Murphy, no DeJounte Murray there. They've been relying on him quite a bit. He comes up short in this one. And then you look at Portland, they make 40% of their threes. So I think it's partly just a three-point battle and the variance that kind of comes with it in this game. Plus, just sort of getting beat where we all thought you were going to get beat, which is on the glass and defensively. Like, they have a personnel issue right now. Their best guys are not out there, and it's been a concern for them. So they are still 2-1. I think overall you got to probably feel pretty good about that if you're New Orleans, considering all the injuries that you're dealing with. But you never can feel good about losing to Portland because they stink, and that's what happened. Yeah. So
I think everybody, all the fans, it is early season, so Wes and I both know that like this stuff will change over the course of the year, and especially as teams figure out their identity. But early season, you really want to see your team get off to a strong start, and you want to see in the offseason they work to mitigate some of their weaknesses. And the Pels just look like they have not been able to do that yet. But we'll find out, hopefully, when they get healthy soon.
That's right. That wraps up Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts.